possibilities than you have ever dared believe. Did you know that the average person uses only about 10% of their total mental capacity? The most unexplored territory on the face of the earth is on top of your shoulders. You have what it takes to achieve great things, and if you're capable of listening to this recording, you can become a multimillionaire. Remember, you are what you are, and you are where you are today because that is what and where you chose. That is what you have demanded from your life. The choice was up to you, and you decided. But you can now decide to change all of that and reach for new levels of success. Success and everything you need to become a success already exist within you. With the insight you're about to gain into the exciting powers within you, you can now start living a life of possibilities. The only limits that we have are the limits that we place on ourselves or allow others to place on us. Now, when I say others place limits on us, I don't mean that our friends and loved ones try intentionally to hold us back. They think that the advice they give is sound. They don't want to see us hurt. Why? If it were really possible to become a great success today, don't you think your friends and neighbors would have already done it? They're smarter than you are. If you don't believe that, go ask them. You see, when we step away from the crowd and begin to march to the beat of a different drummer, people tend to criticize and laugh at us and tell us that we're wrong. We become a threat to the status quo. If we can make it, then that means that they can make it, and it makes them look bad. We have to stop listening to other people. Many years ago, my brother Clyde and I decided that if we only had a bicycle, we would probably be the two happiest kids in the world. We asked our dad about it, and he explained that he didn't have the money for a new bicycle, but he did give us an old jackass. Well, it doesn't take long for the novelty of an old jackass to wear off. It just can't compare with a new bicycle. Clyde, well, he was older and smarter than me, and he started thinking about it, and he figured that if we could just get that old jackass into town, we could probably find someone and swap it off for a new bicycle. We asked Dad, and he said that swapping the jackass was fine with him. So early on the next Friday morning, we started into town. My brother Clyde riding the jackass and me running along behind. We had not gone very far when our nearest neighbor pulled up beside us in his old truck. He stopped and yelled at my brother. "Clyde Stokes," he yelled, "you ought to be ashamed of yourself, up there riding like some high and mighty Democrat while your little brother Terry has to run along behind. You should let the little fellow ride, and you walk along behind." Well, we figured that our neighbor was smarter than we were, so he was probably right. So Clyde climbed down, and he helped me up onto the jackass. We'd only gone about a mile farther when we met up with Melissa Jones. Now, Melissa had always been a little sweet on Clyde. But she looked over and she said to me, "Terry Stokes, you should be ashamed of yourself up there enjoying a ride while your poor brother Clyde has to walk in the hot sun. Why don't you both ride?" I was ashamed, so I helped my brother up onto the old jackass with me, and we headed off into town. Now, it was a really hot day, and I guess we were just too much of a load for that old jackass, because he just stopped right in the middle of the road. He wouldn't budge. We yelled and cajoled. I guess that's where the term stubborn as a jackass comes from, because he wasn't moving. We did everything we could think of. We were about to give up when the boat ride boys pulled up in their brand new convertible. They started laughing. They laughed so hard, I thought they were going to bust. Tom Boatwright, he looks over at me and he says, "Looks to me like you boys ought to be carrying that jackass instead of him carrying you." Well, they laughed a little more, and then they took off down the road, leaving us in a cloud of dust. Well, of course, we didn't like being laughed at, but those boys were older and their daddy was rich, so maybe they were right. We both climbed down, and Clyde picked up the front end of that old jackass, and I picked up what Clyde told me was the stupid end, and we headed on into town. About a mile from town, We had to cross this creek. Well, actually, it was more like a raging river with a waterfall and everything. But all we could think of was our new bicycle. About halfway across, I slipped and fell, which caused my brother Clyde to fall. Well, to get to the point of this story, the last time we saw our jackass, he was going over the falls. Looking back now, I guess the moral of this story is pretty obvious. When you listen to too many people, you are going to lose your ass. If you listen to other people telling you that you can't or that you shouldn't or that it won't work, you will never step out from the crowd and even try. So stop listening. Life should be wonderful and interesting and never a bore. That's the way life was meant to be, and that's the way it can be for you. Your life is the result of your thinking. And to receive favorable results, you must think in favorable terms. There are many possibilities for your life which you may not have even considered. Possibility thinking will open doors to your potential that will amaze and delight you more than anything else. A perfect example of positive thinking and positive thought is a friend of mine by the name of Mark Usick. Bad things never happened to Mark because he refused to accept the possibility that bad things could happen to him. Mark loved horses, and for several years he had tried to buy a particular horse from one of his neighbors. His offers were always rejected, but Mark, who would never give up, kept calling and making offers. One night, the neighbor's horse died. He called Mark first thing the next morning and he told him he had decided finally to sell him the horse. Mark just knew that his persistence had paid off. They made a deal over the phone and agreed that Mark would send the cash to the neighbor's house and the horse would be delivered the next day. Somehow, during the negotiations, the neighbor had forgotten to mention that the horse had died. A few months later, the neighbor spotted Mark coming down the street, and it was too late for him to cross over to the other side and avoid him. Well, when they met, the neighbor began, listen, Mark, I'm sorry I haven't returned your calls, but, well, my wife has been sick, and, well, the kids have been down with the flu, and the dog ran away. Don't worry about it, Mark said. I was just trying to call you to thank you for the horse. With a puzzled expression, the neighbor said, didn't you notice anything strange about the horse? Mark said, strange? Well, no, not really. Oh, you mean that the horse was dead? Sure, I noticed that, but that was okay. Well, why aren't you angry? Asked the neighbor. Mark replied, why should I be angry? I sold 20,000 raffle tickets for that horse online for $2 each. I made a nice little profit. Well, what about the guy that won the horse? Wasn't he upset? Asked the neighbor. Well, he was a little bit at first, but I gave him his $2 back. If you think in positive terms, you will get positive results. Negative thinking causes doubt, fear, and worry. Consider some of these statistics of worry. Over 18 million Americans suffer from some form of mental illness. More people commit suicide than die from the 5 most common diseases. 70% of all patients attended by doctors could cure themselves by eliminating their inner fears and worries. We live in a society of worrying people. There are people who worry so much they even worry about their worries. It has been said that life is full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happen. Try this formula for overcoming worry. First, remember that most of the things you worry about will never happen. Ask yourself, though, if it does happen, what is the very worst possible outcome? Once you've decided that, prepare to accept it if you have to, but then calmly proceed to improve on the worst. See, if you have a problem and you can do something about it, then do it. And now there's no problem, so why worry? If you have a problem and you can't do anything about it, why worry? You have probably missed many solutions because you were too busy worrying to solve the problem. Enough said about worrying. It's too unimportant even to worry about. You should start each new day with possibility thinking. Anticipate good things. And as the events of the day unfold, remember to adhere to this same attitude. Carefully examine each new situation as it develops and picture it as it really is and not as it first appeared. See, each event of our lives adds to our experience and prepares us for greater things. With that attitude, we can always shout, "Yeah, that's good," and then stay tuned for the best things in life still to come. Now, this brings me to one of my pet peeves. When someone greets you and asks you, "How are you?" do you think they want to hear or even care about all of your problems? "Well, not so good today. My back hurts and my car got repossessed and the dog is sick." Shut the hell up. They don't care. They were politely greeting you and you decided to unload all of your problems on them. Now, if you want to make heads turn, the next time someone says, "How are you?" respond with an enthusiastic, "Great," no matter how you really feel. Great. After a few times of doing this, you will actually start to believe it and begin to feel great. This could be called fake it till you make it, or project it till you perfect it. I would like to tell you a story. This is a true story and one that I dearly love because it is true. Many years ago in a faraway land, a young prince was sent off to war. It was in the early days of gunpowder, and a cannon exploded near where the young prince was standing. He survived, but his face was badly burned and scarred. When he returned from the war, his mother, the queen, could not bear to look upon his burned and twisted face. So the young prince was sent to live in the mountains with an old wizard. Being a wizard of great power, he made for the young prince a mask to hide the hideous scars. He made the mask a handsome and beautiful face, and he made it from a magical material that would allow the skin to breathe, so the mask would never have to be taken off. Years passed, and the old wizard died. The young prince returned home from the mountains, and the king and queen thought that God had laid hands on their son and healed his wounds. Eventually the king died and the prince became king. Now, because he felt ugly and scarred on the inside, he tried to be beautiful on the outside. He was a kind and generous king, and he was loved by all of his subjects. And when the time came for him to choose a queen, being the most handsome man in the kingdom because of the mask, he naturally chose the most beautiful woman. Because, again, he felt ugly on the inside, he tried to be beautiful on the outside, which made him a thoughtful and loving husband. Every night, he would stroke his queen's golden hair, look into her eyes and tell her how beautiful she was and how much he loved her and how lucky he was to have her. And as the years passed, the queen aged and her golden hair turned to silver. But because the king's face was a mask, he remained handsome and young looking. Still, every night, he would stroke his wife's silver hair, look into her eyes and touch her wrinkled face and tell her how beautiful she was and how much he loved her and how lucky he was to have her. In time, the king grew ill, and on his deathbed, he gave his queen a letter and instructed her not to open it until after his death. The king died, and sitting by his bed, the queen opened the letter, and through her tears she began to read, "My darling, tonight this letter will have to touch your beautiful face. It will touch your hair and tell you of my love." He went on to tell her about the accident and his burned and scarred face. He told her about the old wizard and about the mask. He concluded, "So you see, all these years I have lived a lie. After I'm gone, I want you to remove the mask and see me for what I really am. And my dying prayer is after seeing me, you will love me for what I really was instead of what I pretended to be." Slowly, with trembling hands, the queen peeled the mask from the king's face. Over the years, the mask had formed his real face to be just as handsome, just as young-looking as the mask. He had become what he had pretended to be. I said in the beginning that this is a true story, and it is. The story of the mask can be your story or mine. Becoming whoever or whatever we want is simply a matter of deciding who or what and then wearing the mask. See the possibilities and understand that every challenge you encounter brings with it new possibilities. Choose the possibilities that align with your purpose and move ahead towards greatness.